Is it? Yep. I call Congress to order. If you could take your seats. Many thanks to Yo Sisewa and the band who's been playing for us this morning. Thank you. Congress, to begin this morning, as we have done the previous couple of mornings, we're going to have an industrial case study of a dispute, and I would now like to invite Unite members John Lynch, Phil Clark, John Brown and Tommy Jennings to join us on the stage. They are all employed by Peel Ports as dock workers here in Liverpool, and they played a key role in the dispute involving 600 dock workers at the end of last year and won an 18% pay rise. So, Congress, please, we now listen to Tommy, John, Phil and other John.
Dear conference comrades, good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at the TCL conference and giving me the time to give you an update on the strike that went on last year in the Port of Liverpool last September. We started to negotiate a pay claim for the membership that would help and support the membership during the cost of living crisis. Unfortunately, the company and the shareholders thought very differently. We was left no other option but to ballot the members for industrial action through a postal ballot. The results come back 99.9% in favour of industrial action. From the 19th of September, over a 7-week period, we were on strike for 5 weeks. We had a 24-hour picket line 7 days a week. During our industrial action, we would like to thank everybody who for message of support, videos and everybody who attended the picket line during our industrial action. Apologies. If anybody wasn't aware, it's important this. Well, I can get it. If anybody wasn't aware, the last Liverpool dockers strike was in 1995. The SAC Liverpool dockers were let down by the government and the Prime Minister, who was elected at the time. The Liverpool dockers was betrayed by their own union and General Secretary, which cost 500 Liverpool dockers their jobs. It was the longest dispute in the UK, lasting 28 months. Mike Carden, one of the SAC Liverpool dockers, has sadly passed away. Mike Carden has written a fantastic book called Betrayal. It's his book regarding the history of the Liverpool dockers and their dispute. I fully recommend that everyone reads the book written by Mike Carden called Betrayal. We had to be very mindful and not let history repeat itself, especially with the legislation passed by the Tory government and Grant Shapps, where agency workers could replace striking workers. This was what happened in 1995, so we had to be very mindful, so we voted for staggered strike action. The big difference for the most recent Liverpool dockers strike was we were given 100% support from the General Secretary, Sharon Graham. The United Union Strike Fund of £350 a week helped the members massively, plus donations from other workplaces and branches and other unions. The United Union Leverage Department was also key and critical and helped us massively. Peel Port's second biggest shareholder is a company called Australian Super, which is a pension provider in Australia. We found out that Australian Super is part owned by Australian unions. I would like to thank Christy Kane, the National Secretary from the CFMMEU, who fought our corner in Australia with the Australian Trades Council and shareholders, Australian Super. I would also like to thank the international unions for their support, the IDC, the EDC, the ITF, the MUA, and also Ken Riley and Mark Bass from the ILA from the USA, who flew from America to stand on our picket lines. The ILA also made a donation of $15,000 to our dispute. I'd also like to say a big thank you to the local musicians, Jamie Webster, Anthony Russell and Sway, who came to the picket lines on the 24th of September, and where we had over 200,000 people turn up. I would also like to thank all the local celebrities, actors, sporting celebrities for video messages, plus Tony Bellew, the Smith brothers, Stephen Graham, Peter Lee, plus many more, Jamie Carrick, Paddy the Baddy, bought meatly, turn up the picket line more than once. We'd also like to thank the politicians who came to the picket line: Ian Burns, John MacDonald, Dan Carden, Jeremy Corbyn and many more. While taking industrial action, we were issued with a HR1 notice and threatened to make redundancies across all 3 sections. That was taking industrial action. In my department alone, we were told 137 people were at risk of losing their job. I am proud to confirm that no redundancies took place across all 3 sections. During the 5 weeks of industrial action, we had nobody cross the picket line from all 3 different sections that took industrial action. The 2 container terminals were brought to a complete standstill during the industrial action taken. We eventually got a new offer from the company that was agreed by the membership. This worked out between 14.5 and 18.5 depending on your skill set. Since returning to work, we have set up Liverpool Dockers in the community. We have supported many local charities, food banks and supported other workers who have taken industrial action, which is Jacob workers, rail workers, NHS workers, postal workers and many more, plus also sending a donation from the branch. Liverpool Docks is back on the map for all the correct reasons, being an organised and unionised workplace and a branch with over 1,000 members in the 628 branch. I would like to thank all the members who stood shoulder to shoulder on the picket lines. If we are together, it's impossible to fail. Liverpool Dockers here to stay. Thank you, conference.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Tommy Jennings. I'm a proud Liverpool Docker. I'm also a proud Unite member. John's touched it. John's touched on our strike, but I just want to say a little bit about what it was like on strike. And my proudest moment was when our General Secretary, Sharon Graham, said, "You can have whatever you want." That, you know, it was amazing because, you know, the last strike, as John said, was 95 on the docks. And we've been fighting ever since, and we'll keep fighting because right's on our side. And the lies, the deceit, what the company done, try and put the fear of God up to our members. When our General Secretary come up to that picket line and addressed us all and gave us that confidence to crack on, it meant the world to us. Thank you for that, Sharon. But I remember one day, you know, dashing down rain, dead windy, and we're standing there waving our flags, all of us, like we are. And one of the managers went past in the car and rolled his window down, started laughing. I said, "Do you think we're scared of rain? This is our job. This is what we do. You're the one that's scared in the car, lads. Look at us. I know what we won." Thank you.
Thank you, conference.
Thank you. Congress. I'll be taking our unfinished business this morning. That is Composite 10, Financial Services, supporting the e-disadvantaged. Motion 77, National Trades Union support for trades councils. Motion 78, Risk e-newsletter. And motion 79, supporting the Ron Todd Foundation. As previously notified, I will take the emergency motions at the end of published business. Can movers and seconders be ready for that unfinished business to be able to move and second? I am intending to take a small number of speakers on emergency motion 1 on ticket office closures consultation. Delegates, we start this morning with section 2 of the General Council report, page 18, the economy and cost of living crisis. So I call Composite 2, Time to Value Arts, Heritage and Creative Industries. The General Council support the motion and it's to be moved by Prospect, seconded by Artists Union England and supported by UCU. And Equity will also be speaking in this debate.
Good morning, conference. Last day. Yippee. I can go back to work. President, Congress, Freddie Brown, Prospect. Moving composite motion 2. My union is proud to represent more than 10,000 professionals and specialists, curators, conservators, archaeologists, working in our heritage sector, in our museums and galleries, historic houses and gardens, library collections, and more. They are experts who unearth historical treasures, who curate them into exhibitions, who make sense of them to visitors of all ages and backgrounds, and who welcome you and your children into them on a rainy Saturday or in a school holiday. They are skilled and dedicated professionals, eager to share their knowledge with us. But for too long, those politicians who profess to care most about conserving and promoting British culture and heritage have failed to give the sector the funding it needs. Rhetoric around pride in British history and culture has been accompanied by brutal funding cuts that have led to closures and cutbacks, threatening the ability of future generations to enjoy and learn them, our world-leading heritage and cultural sites. Our members working in the sector have borne the brunt of these savage cuts. On Monday at our Fringe meeting, we heard stories of workers unable to afford the petrol they needed to work overtime. Others stuck on zero-hour contracts. Too many only able to stay in their roles because of financial support from a partner or family member. Their stories are not uncommon, with real-term pay cuts since 2011 of up to 26%, eating into our members' standard of living and leaving their pay far below that of similarly qualified workers in other public services like education. Last year, 20% of Conservatives earn less than $25,000, of whom 70% of those surveyed had masters or PhDs. Their work just isn't just poorly paid, it's also insecure too. And the opportunities for progression are becoming ever more limited. Too many of our members are looking to leave the profession. They love to get a job that pays the bills and doesn't leave them reliant on food banks. Forget the culture wars the government is waging, a war on culture itself. But it is not one that the public are on board with our polling showing 8% of Remainers, Leavers, Tories, Lib Dems and Labour voters believe learning about our heritage through these attractions is important, and 71% believing it important to have knowledgeable staff and experts working at them. The public recognises the value that the sector brings to our economy, contributing a gross value out of almost 15 billion in a year, more than our agriculture or pharmaceutical manufacturing industries, and almost in line with the entire car industry, and bringing in 13 million international tourists who spend over 7.4 billion a year. But this government simply does not and risk choking off a sector critical to our regional and national economies. That is why Prospect has been fighting for a sector and its workers through our world-class heritage second-class pay campaign, and calling for the experts and specialists who bring so much value to our economy to be properly recognised. Our motion calls for the General Council to devise a fair and sustainable funding model for arts and heritage in this country. We must end this regime of second-class pay. Congress, I urge you to support this motion, ensure that our heritage sector isn't confined to a dustbin of history. Thank you.
AUE.
Good morning, Conference. Lorraine Monk, Artists Union England, speaking about this really important composite. Our communities have been economically ruined by years of so-called austerity government, destroying, as you know, every aspect of our work and lives. We need to rebuild. We know what a challenge that will be. Priorities need to be set. The creative arts and the workers in them need to be part of that priority. Why? Why when there are so many priorities? Because it's almost impossible in many areas of the arts to live on money earned from creative work. Side hustles are what everyone does, the second job that pays the rent. Because the creative arts, all of them, they take us, everyone, from our ordinary lives and make us fly beyond our day-to-day existences, time travelling to any place, any century, past or future, any idea. What price can you put on that? What society can live without that? And here's the economic argument. The creative arts are vital to the UK economy, 109 billion in 2021. Continued changes in the work patterns will affect everyone's work. Films, concerts, performances, exhibitions, they will be important, needed as a part of a new work-life balance. Art practices support both the physical and mental health of everyone, for those that participate, for those who create, those who wish to learn to create, and those who enjoy all forms of creative art. The Conservatives have left art provision in ruins in every area of the arts, in every region, robbing Peter to not pay Paul. The funding the Art Council gives is minimal, provision piecemeal, transparency zero. We need proper funding bodies, its committees truly representative. Artists are left to sink or swim. No support for people starting out, for keeping going, for building their practice, for developing ideas. Like everyone else, they need money to live and money for materials, money to have spaces to make in and pay for exhibition space. We call on Congress to support our call to develop a coordinated approach to the creative arts in the UK, to ensure that different areas of government work together to create an overarching government art provision for the UK in the 21st century, one that truly represents everyone, that tells the stories and histories of all and every one of our people, not just the few as it is at the moment. Conference, please support.
Thank you. I call UCU.
Maria Chandragani, UCU Vice President. President, Congress. Cuts to arts and heritage are a direct attack to working class people, on our collective cultural wealth. In recent months, we have seen targeted cuts on arts and humanities education, course closures in Wolverhampton with some 500 employees redundant and 138 courses closing. At Roehampton, classics, anthropology, creative writing, photography closed. In Chichester, the first African-British professor of history is made redundant and the landmark African history course axed. Cuts in Goldsmiths, in Birkbeck, in Brighton, in Huddersfield, in East Anglia, in Highlands and the Islands universities. Congress. These cuts not only condemn university staff to poverty, but also shut down opportunities for working class students. They attack the local community and the regional economy, for example, in Norfolk, where the university is the biggest employer. The cuts have hit further education too. Adult education funding slashed by over 40%, reducing opportunities for lifelong arts education, which has huge social and health benefits. That's part of why our proud further education colleagues are now voting yes to the biggest FE ballot in England, with over 100 colleges participating. While Tory ministers proudly parade their Oxbridge classic education, working class students and society as a whole are deprived of expanding our horizons, of engaging with literature, film, music, drama, philosophy, performing arts, social sciences. Arts and the creative industries are one of the biggest UK success stories. We all have the right to access art courses, to study what it is to be human, to be able to engage in good public debate, like here, to learn how to be a good citizen. We must not allow arts to become accessible only to a privileged elite. That is part of why academic and academic-related staff across the 4 nations are in dispute over pay and conditions, participating to the UCU Rising campaign. Arts and heritage is a valuable pillar of our society. We must ensure that arts education remains available to all learners, whether in prisons, colleges, adult education, or universities.
Time, Delegate, please.
Stop the Tory-forced cultural suicide. Please support the composite. Solidarity all.
There are no other indications on anyone joining in this debate, so I'll move to the vote. Vote on Composite 2. All those in favour? Put your hands down. All those against? That is carried. Congress, I call motion 9, which is ending low pay, no pay, culture in art and creative industries. The General Council supports the motion to be moved by Artists Union England, seconded by Equity, and NUJ will be part of the debate.
President, Congress, Zita Holborn, AUE, move in motion 9. Our arts and culture sector has been attacked and cut due to over a decade of austerity, followed by a global pandemic. Artists have struggled to survive, often having to hold down other jobs in order to survive, which are also precarious. For artists who are women, black, and disabled, discrimination in the sector was already there. This has been amplified over the past 10 years because of cuts and the pandemic. The pandemic has led to an over 40% reduction in black women in the creative arts sector. Black women already had the lowest earnings in the sector. There was a £50 million cut to arts funding in London. Cuts to arts have an impact in education, on future generations of artists, on students and pupils who are deprived of the well-being and benefits of arts on the curriculum. But artists also have to compete against each other to fund their own work instead of just being paid for their service and their labour like other workers. Socially engaged artists benefit society and support vulnerable and marginalised people, but bear the brunt of cuts to the arts. There's an attitude towards artists that the work we do is not real labour, that we can live off the air we breathe, like we don't have to pay bills, pay for shelter and support families like everyone else. Artists are constantly asked to do work for free, told it will give us exposure. We're expected to contribute time and materials for free, have commissions reneged on, agreements cancelled, work cancelled, and commissioners failing to pay us. Because of the precarious way artists work, with a high proportion working freelance or on temporary contracts, we don't have the same protections as other employees. The no-pay, low-pay culture artists face needs to stop. Artists are doing skilled work. But we also need all communities, including deprived and the poorest, to have access to the arts. We need publicly funded arts. Art should not only be for the wealthy and the elite. It needs to be accessible to everyone. Artists must receive equal pay, be protected from exploitation, and be able to work with dignity and rights. We need to protect and celebrate the arts, and that means adequate funding for the arts and proper pay for artists. We can ensure that as employers, unions set positive examples when engaging, employing or commissioning artists, and that we stand united as a movement against cuts, exploitation, lower and unequal pay and precarious conditions, outsourcing and privatisation, which impact on ability and freedoms to work as artists and to access the arts. I'm co-chair of Public Services International Education Support and Cultural Workers Network. And during the pandemic, we produced a manifesto for cultural workers. It calls for opposition to the commodification of culture, opposition to the policing of borders which prevent artists working internationally, against precarious treatment, and calls for cultural democracy and decolonisation of the culture sector and legal protections for cultural workers. Unions and individual union members can sign up to the manifesto via the PSI website if you haven't already. In addition, UK creative industries unions in the TUC London Southern and Eastern region have, including AUE, produced a discussion document for implementation, Future of the Arts, Making Culture Ours, and this was discussed at a fringe meeting at last year's Congress. It states that creativity and culture are not an add-on, that arts run through our lives like the air we breathe, that art has the power to impact positively on lives, inclusion, enrichment, regeneration, well-being, mental health, learning and education, the economy and skills. Artists are not here to be used, abused, exploited or discriminated against. We benefit lives, we benefit economies. Work with us as a movement to ensure we are treated with respect, dignity, fair and equal treatment and pay, and please support the motion. I move.
Equity to second.
Hello, Congress. Genevieve Say from Equity seconding this motion, and I'm a first-time delegate. Now, many of us in this room know how damaging the Tory cuts have been to our industries and services. In the arts, we've had an ideological attack on all sides, from the stripping of creative subjects in schools to the systematic cut to public funding. Our membership was left by the government to fall through the gaps of support during the pandemic and is currently being failed by the social security system in the UK. This government has consistently squeezed creativity out of public education, denying creative and cultural experiences to young people. This ideological attack on art subjects means that those who can afford to give their children access to arts and culture do, but those in low-income families are left behind. And when our children come to us saying that they want to be a dancer, an actor, a singer, who amongst us is worried for their future in those jobs? I am, and I am a dancer. We instinctively know that the entertainment industry is characterised by precarity, a saturated workforce with little or no access to basic benefits like sick pay, maternity or paternity leave, or holiday pay. Many of those working in the arts are expected to be based in London, where rental costs are astronomical, and yet the average income for a dancer in the UK is £12,500. Who can live off £12,500? No one can. Cuts to Arts Council funding of 46% in real terms since 2005 have meant that less art and culture is reaching people across England. The result is that even when dancers and actors manage to find work, they're not being offered basic levels of pay, they're not being offered benefits that they're entitled to. The entertainment industry should reflect society in all its technicolor glory. But when faced with these realities, we don't see an industry accessible to all. We see an industry defined by those who can afford to be there. Often, it's levelled at our members that none of that is good, but at least you love what you do. And yes, I do love what I do, but that's not going to pay for my childcare costs. It's not going to pay my mortgage. It's not going to put food on the table. I need fair and equal pay to do that. We need increased public funding to the sector, and we need a government that supports its creative workers through a functioning social security system. We need access to arts for all. Congress, I ask you to support this motion.
NUJ.
Thank you, President. Congress, Natasha Hurst, National Union of Journalists, speaking in support of Motion 9. The NUJ has quite a broad membership, and many of our members work in the arts and the creative sectors. And our members are increasingly exploited, like you've just been hearing about from other speakers, both in terms of poor pay, but also in terms of breaches of our rights. So breaches of copyright, IP infringements, late payments. And it's a double whammy that really reduces the opportunities for us to make a living. In another voluntary role, I'm the chair of a small arts charity, Disability Arts Cymru, and we learned yesterday that activists are never just involved with one thing, are we? So we support the professional development of disabled artists and also advocate for access and inclusion for disabled audiences. But the reliance on grant funding in the arts means that there are so many short-term projects, insecure contracts, precarious working conditions for our staff and also for the artists that we support. But disability arts and all creative endeavours are often used as a tool for achieving political and social change. We use art to tell our stories and give an insight into the challenges that we face and the potential solutions to them. The arts are a conduit for the expression of the human condition, a way for us to share our lived experiences. It gives us space to hope and dream, to subvert authority, and also to challenge the oppression that we're experiencing. And in common with trade unionism, the arts sends out a beacon call for solidarity and collective action. So the expectation that creatives will work out of love for what we do is incredibly damaging. Poor pay makes it so much harder for creatives from a minoritized background to make a living. My work as a photojournalist mostly covers issues of social justice, and it gives power to the communities that I work with because I understand oppression and marginalization. I'm able to represent those challenges without undermining the agency and the dignity of the people whose stories I cover. So the arts are not a luxury. They're not a plaything for the rich to at best sideline and at worst exploit and profit from telling the stories of those who most need to be seen and heard on their own terms. And that is why representation matters in journalism and the arts. So please get behind the campaign to end the low pay, no pay culture in the creative industries. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Motion 9 is before you, Congress. All those in favour? Put your hands down. All those against? That is carried. Calling motion 10, streaming and fair pay for writers, to be moved by the Writers' Guild and seconded by Equity. The General Council supports the motion, and Prospect and NUJ have indicated to speak.
Sandy Toksvig, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. President, Congress, or as we say in show business, darlings. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, may I say how proud I am to be moving this motion for the Writers Guild of Great Britain, for whom I have the honour of being the president. It's going to be seconded by Equity, which is my other union. If anybody else would like me to join their gang, I am available. We need to stick together, people. Right, anybody ever watch Netflix, Amazon, Disney+, Apple, or listen to podcasts on Audible? However did all those companies think of those fun shows? Well, they didn't. Writers did. Writers sitting in their garrets or whatever, they are the ones that come up with the ideas. They write these ideas down, and soon actors are employed, camera operators, prop makers, costumes, makeup, catering, taxi drivers. They all get work, and you get entertained after a long day of union business, simply because a writer had an idea. Our motion, like so many motions, is mad. Let's make sure people receive fair pay for the work they do. I know. It shouldn't need to be a motion. It should be a given, but it isn't. And currently, writers are not receiving fair pay when they work for streaming companies or audio services. So if one of our members works with a UK broadcaster, BBC, ITV, Channel 4, all the writers are contracted under a collectively bargained agreement which we've negotiated. And these agreements all contain provisions which means that when a writer's work is repeated on TV or sold abroad, they share in the success of the work in the form of royalty payments. It's fair and it's essential. So remember that for every famous screenwriter, there are many, many more unknown or less well-known writers just trying to make a living. And trust me, the life of your average jobbing writer is not easy. The hours are long, the work is precarious, sporadic, inconsistent, and royalty payments allow writers to stay afloat through tough times. But when UK writers create shows or produce scripts for a streaming company, they are paid what is known as a buyout fee. So it's essentially, it's a lump sum payment with no further royalties. They're also required to sign over all their intellectual property rights, so they can't use their ideas, again, to form, I don't know, to write books, theatre shows, video games, or produce other forms of entertainment. The companies own all of these rights and profit when they're used again, not the writer whose idea it was in the first place. And this new model means that over the life of a show, writers are paid less overall and don't share in the success of their work when it does well. So if you watch a favorite show over and over on a streaming service, chances are that the writer is getting nothing, and yet the show, of course, wouldn't exist without them. Because writers do not receive royalties, they are less likely to be able to sustain their careers. And think about that, that's a real problem for writers from traditionally underrepresented backgrounds, working class, writers of colour, those with disabilities. There is a risk that writing will become less diverse, a profession only for those who can afford it, and what you watch will be way less interesting. One of the great cons of our time is the notion that creating culture, writing, acting, making film and TV is somehow a privilege, a luxury, when actually it's work. And it's work that generates £108 billion a year and employs over 2 million people. Which is how we know we're not asking for something that these companies can't afford. Netflix, 238 million global subscribers, $1.5 billion in profit last year. In 2022, the co-CEOs Reed Hastings and Ted Sarandos received over $50 million each in cash and stocks, up 25% and 31.5% from 2021, respectively. Writers just want a fair share for the work they do, creating the shows that you all know and love. I'm sure many of you are aware of the industrial action being taken by our sister organization, the Writers Guild of America and the US Actors Union, SAG-AFTRA, over these same issues. Like us, They want the streaming platforms to share viewership details and pay royalties, to treat writers and actors well. It is in all our interests to put a stop to these unfair practices which are being used by the streaming platforms, which is why we must end buyouts, get a return to fair collective bargained agreements that include royalties or residuals or whatever you want to call them, and why we call on Congress to send our solidarity to the Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA members who are taking action. If you ever watch TV or movies or listen to podcasts, then you are all in this with us. Come on, my lovelies, please support the motion.
Equity, Paul Fleming. You're tall, Paul, you're tall.
I'm taller than I realised. Paul Fleming, General Secretary of Equity. Congress, we stand here at an absolutely historic time for the entertainment industry. Our sister unions in the United States, the Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA, are out on strike at the same time. That has not happened since Ronald Reagan was president. Not president of the United States, but president of SAG-AFTRA. The dispute in the 1960s, along with our dispute against ITV, was about a new world of TV, a new distribution of cinema. And at the heart of that was how people get paid when the work has stopped, but the reel is still turning. Why does that matter? Why do royalties matter to artists? Why did they matter in the 60s and why do they matter now? Because the bosses want a freelance workforce and they do not want to pay for it. Our members have to spend significant times at rest, so the bosses can have the luxury of asking them to fly around the planet at 48 hours' notice to record the scenes that you watch at home. If they want that flexibility, they have to pay for it, and the way they pay for it is through a fair and proportionate share in the capital that their labour creates. That is all we're asking for, and it's what we won in the 1960s. But the lines that come from Netflix, from Disney+, from Paramount, and from others that say that our members cannot be accounted for in the way that they have done since the 1930s in film, since the 1960s in TV, is a pernicious argument. And it matters, Congress. It matters to every single person in this room. Why? Because it is an attack on working people, not just the working people who are in our union, but the working people who get to tell your stories on screen. What sort of creative workforce do we want? When your kid is in a school play and they come home with that raw talent, do you think that one of our industries is a good place for them to go? A place full of economic certainty, a world paved with gold? It is not. This is about the right of working class people to be artists, to have voices to tell your stories on screen. Because without the fundamental bedrock of royalties, of streaming payments, and sensible collective agreements, this is but a myth. Congress, stand with this motion, stand with our class, and stand with our sister unions, the Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA. Thank you.
Prospect. And you, Jay, next.
Congress, President. Ellie Wade speaking for Prospect. If you've seen a British blockbuster series recently, it's not just made in Britain, it's made in BEC2. Because Prospect's BEC2 sector members are the behind-the-scenes crew. They're the camera operators, the costume designers, the sound engineers, special effects experts, the riggers and the runners. And representing them, we stand firmly with the Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA in the ongoing dispute with the streaming giants. But we do so at an incredibly challenging time, and with the knowledge that many of our members are facing yet another crisis. The knock-on effects of the writers' and actors' disputes in the US have caused UK-based production to grind to a halt. In our recent survey of almost 4,000 freelance film and TV workers, 3/4 of respondents said they were not currently working. 35% are struggling to pay their bills. Almost a quarter don't see themselves working in the industry in 5 years' time. This is clearly a period of immense challenge for them. But it's symptomatic of an industry where the streaming giants and other employers have exploited the creative workforce while making billions in profits. That's the business model. All Netflix, no chill. That has got to change. Because without the creative workforce, there is no business. It's their talent, their ingenuity that brings us those unforgettable on-screen moments. So across the Atlantic and here at home, creative unions must stand together. Fighting for fair pay, a stable pay structure, fairer deals and contracts, and the protection of writers' rights in the digital environment as artificial intelligence advances. This fight is a global one, with the same employers undervaluing film and TV workers here in the UK and the enormous contribution they make to our economy. It's a fight we must win if we are to raise standards and improve working conditions in both British studios and Hollywood. So the TUC sector and Prospect is proud to stand with the Writers' Guild of Great Britain in its campaign for a fair pay model. And we call upon the employers to bring the US industrial action to an end by giving their workers the fair deal they deserve. So Congress, please stand with us in support of this motion. Let us send our full-throated solidarity to our creative counterparts across the pond, and let's win a future where those making the shows and films that we love are not just surviving, but thriving. Thank you.
NUJ.
Steve Bird, National Union of Journalists, President Congress, thank you. We heard yesterday about the threat that AI poses to actors, to musicians, to filmmakers. It looks very much like, not content with having a low-paid, casualised workforce, they'd quite like to have no workforce at all. And this is at the heart of what the action that's taking place in the US. The writers, we actually, as one of our sister unions, we have journalists within the Writers Guild. And so I'm very proud to be stood here to offer them our solidarity. It's also extremely heartening that this anger has boiled over. Many of you will have seen on social media the numbers of actually relatively well-known actors taking to the streets and standing on soapboxes in support of the Writers Guild action. I thought the best thing I could do was to approach some of our fellow members in the US and get a statement. So if you bear with me, I'd just like to read that out. Today marks the 134th day of Writers Guild of America strike against the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, the organisation that represents studios and streamers. WGA members are united in our goal to fix a broken system, stop the systematic erosion of our careers, and ensure that we share in the success of the content we create. WGA members have come too far to settle for a contract that does not address streaming residuals to capture the global growth of streaming platforms. I hope you support this motion and join me in expressing our solidarity with our sister unions. Thank you.
Congress, motion number 10, taking the vote. Will all those in favour of motion number 10 please show? Put your hands down. All those against? That is carried. Congress, I am pleased to welcome the Right Honourable Harriet Harman, who joins us as this year's sororal delegate from the Labour Party. Harriet has been an MP for over 40 years, representing South London, and has held numerous cabinet and shadow cabinet posts. She was deputy leader of the Labour Party and has been acting leader. Trying to remember how long she was acting leader, can't quite remember, but it was longer than Liz Truss was Prime Minister. Harriet is a lifelong campaigner for women, for human rights and equality, and a friend of the trade union movement. She is a feminist and one of our most distinguished parliamentarians. Harriet, You're very welcome, and I invite you to address Congress.
Good morning. Thank you for that generous introduction. I thought I'd never speak on the same platform as Maria again, as last time I preemptively announced her forthcoming civil partnership with Angela Eagle, which was a big surprise to her friends and family. Sorry about that, Maria. I promise no breach of confidence this time. Congratulations to Paul, who's made a cracking start in his new role as General Secretary to the TUC. And what an important speech we all saw on our TVs about your family, Paul, about migrants who come here to build this country. Thank you for saying that. And it's a pleasure to be here with you in your awesome home city of Liverpool. I want to add my tribute to your outstanding former General Secretary, Frances O'Grady. She's now chairing our Equal Pay Commission and has been a beacon across the trade union movement, particularly for women. It's inspiring to see here at Congress the women delegates and the new women General Secretaries who are fearlessly taking your unions forward. You are pioneers. Women used to be shut out of union leadership, and now you've pushed the door open. As good as it is to have this, for the men here, do not breathe a sigh of relief. You are not off the hook. We used to shut men out of the women's movement, but now we are calling on you to step forward and back your sisters up. To be active male allies, and that includes tackling the sexual harassment that for too long has marred our movement. It's a huge privilege for me to bring you greetings and solidarity from all your friends, colleagues, and comrades in the Labour Party. From my time giving legal advice to the Trico equal pay strikers in the 1970s and the Grumwick workers in the 1980s, I have always known that employees are powerless without the collective strength of their union. Labour is deeply proud of you, our brothers and sisters in the trade union movement. We won't forget what you and your members did during the pandemic. The sheer courage of those workers when COVID was spreading like wildfire and there was no vaccination in sight. Shop workers, transport workers, cleaners, postal workers, teachers, teaching support workers, delivery workers, utility workers, NHS workers, and many, many more. These people to whom we owe so much, on whom the country depends, who you in this room represent. And we have not forgotten how you fought for those workers to be able to have as much protection as possible while they had to go out to work, as many of us stayed safe at home. And as the government have wrecked the economy and ground down people's living standards and shown themselves to be completely out of touch with the reality that that means, you in the trade unions have shown you understand the concerns of working people. You've heard their struggles, you've spoken up for them, you've supported them, you have fought for their pay at the negotiating table, and you have delivered. You have shown that you truly are the strong champion at work that people need, and you have shown that the trade union movement is as necessary today as it ever was. The enduring link between the trade unions and Labour is based in our history, but it's vital for today and for our future. We share values and hopes. We work together to achieve them. So thank you to those who, as affiliated unions, serve on our National Executive Committee, who toil on the National Policy Forum and provide expert advice. thank you for your support for our Labour MPs and our Labour councillors, and for campaigning for Labour throughout England, Scotland and Wales. And thank you to your members who choose to pay the political levy to contribute invaluable financial support. You and your members will help us get into government and help us deliver when we are in government, and we never take that for granted. You heard from Angela Rayner yesterday. What an amazing woman she is. You can see why she terrorises the Tories weekly in the House of Commons and makes me feel like a shrinking violet. She's a living example. She's a living example of the transformation the trade unions and a Labour government can make to someone's life. And now, with crumbling schools, endless hospital waiting lists, we are long overdue for the next Labour government and the change that would bring, real transformative change. And that will be evident in our New Deal for working people. No one can do their best if they're racked with fear about the future, or if there's no proper safety net to support them in times of sickness or poor health. And that's what Labour's New Deal for working people is about. Our clear commitment to start improving the lives of working people as soon as we take office. In the first 100 days of a Labour government, we will give workers their rights from day one. We will improve maternity and paternity rights and rights for pregnant women and new parents returning to work. Build on Labour's Equality Act, end fire and rehire, and much more. And Congress, the evidence is clear, and our argument is, in countries that have stronger collective bargaining, you get a stronger economy too. So we will strengthen collective bargaining rights, make it easier for trade unions to organise in workplaces, repeal anti-trade union laws, including the pernicious minimum standards law. And we will give trade unions a strong voice alongside business in a new Industrial Strategy Council, a partnership to grow our economy. As Keir Starmer has said, an economy that is strong for working people cannot weaken the institutions that give working people strength. You don't have to choose between a strong economy and a fair society. Economic prosperity and social justice are not opposites, they go hand in hand. To do this, we have to win, and with you, that is what we will work ceaselessly to do. Before I finish, I'd like to mention a dedicated Labour and trade unionist who's no longer with us and who we all dearly miss, and that is Jack Dromey. I want to thank you for the real outpouring of respect and affection so many of you from all around the country showed for him after his death last year. It means so much to me and our family, more than I can say. Thank you. But we know absolutely, don't we, what Jack would be saying to us today. He'd be saying, we are so close now, don't mess it up. Working people are depending on us. Work together, don't argue. It's within reach, we can do it. And to me, of whom he was so supportive, he'd say, that was a remarkable speech you've just made to the TUC, probably your best yet. But I'll leave you to be the judge of that. Congress, let's get that change. Let's get that Labour government. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet, and thank you for all that you have delivered for working people. Congress, as I said earlier, we're now going to take our outstanding business. So I call, finally, Composite 10, Financial Services Supporting the Disadvantaged. The General Council support this motion to be moved by Aegis, seconded by GMB, supported by CW, and Unite are going to speak in the debate as well.
President, Congress, finally, Brian Lynn, General Secretary, Aegis the Union, moving Composite 10. In recent years, we have witnessed the mass closure of banks, building societies, post office branches. This is driven by technology advancements and, of course, the opportunity for them to make massive cost savings. Congress, we are really concerned about the impact this has on the most vulnerable segments of our society, particularly the digital disadvantaged. As these physical branches shut their doors, a multitude of challenges emerge for individuals who lack access to digital banking services. This shift disproportionately affects individuals who lack the necessary digital skills or access to technology. This includes the elderly, low-income families, those living in rural areas with limited internet connectivity, and there's many, many more. Now, for a young laddie like me, it's not a problem. I can just get my phone out, Face lets me into it, and have a wee app, quick look at it, and see who's taking money off me. That's easy, but for many, especially elderly people, who some don't even have mobile phones and refuse to get them, how are they going to do their banking? The High Street where I moved to 20 years ago had 2 banks and 3 building societies in it. Now it doesn't have any. The last bank shut in June this year. And any time I'd go to that bank or walk past, there was a queue out the door of elderly people doing their banking. It's their only way and only means of seeking financial advice, making cash withdrawals, putting money in and out. All these institutions have closed their branches and not taken any responsibility whatsoever to cater for their customers. They've just assumed everyone will get on with it, but they don't. They have to go to another town now to do their banking and get someone to take them maybe. So the whole thing has got way out of hand. And in actual fact, when they started closing all these branches about 10, 13 years ago, en masse, legislation should have been brought in then to make sure they looked after these vulnerable customers. But they haven't. So they need to do something about it. And what they could do now is, and especially if Labour get in, they need to do it. They need to bring in legislation to make sure the financial institutions who close their branches should adopt and pay for inclusive strategies that cater to the needs of the digitally disadvantaged. They need to be responsible and look after their customers, not abandon them. Second, public and private partnerships also play a crucial role. The government should be collaborating with the banks to establish community hubs or pop-up branches in the areas where there's high populations of digitally disadvantaged individuals. These hubs could easily be placed within the post office network, for instance. Here's an idea. Driven by proper legislation, the financial institutions and government could pay contributions to the post office branches and keep them open and maybe even expand it. These hubs could offer basic banking services, free cash withdrawal machines, digital literacy workshops and technology access points. Additionally, partnerships with telecommunications companies could lead to improved internet infrastructure in rural and underserved areas, ensuring that everyone has a fair shot at accessing digital services. Surely it's not beyond the wit of this government. I laugh every time I read that line. I'm going to say it again. Surely it's not beyond the wit of this government. Really is. Most things are beyond the wit of this government, aren't they? But the government, financial institutions, post offices can get together and resolve this situation. Question is, do they care? No. Do they have the will or the want? No. Are they being pressured into resolving the situation? No. Well, that's where we come in. With TUC-led pressure and initiatives to demand concerted efforts from financial institutions, the post office, the government, community organisations, the challenges posed by these closures can be significantly mitigated. Congress, please support. I move.
GMB.
President, Congress, Taranjit Chana, pronouns she, her, seconding motion 29 on behalf of the GMB. We'd like to thank Aegis for submitting this important motion and accepting our amendment. And to the CWU, we are fully behind your campaign to keep the post office at the heart of our communities. Solidarity to you. Congress, this is a crucial issue for working people. How can we pay for our everyday needs during a cost of living crisis when withdrawing our money becomes too difficult? Lack of access to cash isolates those on low incomes, the elderly and the most vulnerable. Even most of us feel its impact as we move in and out of relying on cash during our lives. It impacts any workplace that is public facing. More council services and town centre car parks no longer accept cash. A mass closure of railway station ticket offices would deny rail travel to those who need to purchase tickets in cash. GMB has long campaigned against this sleepwalk to a cashless society. It will be devastating for our members working in the cash-in-transit sector. Our members know how many livelihoods rely on the skilled work they do, making sure the nation's cash flows smoothly and securely. Yet they are faced looming job losses as more than 16,000 cash machines have closed since 2008, and the number of withdrawals have halved during the COVID pandemic. But our members also know that there is nothing inevitable about this decline. In parts of the US, lawmakers are reversing it and enforcing cash acceptance, requiring businesses to accept cash payments in stores. The UK government has made a start to legally require banks to maintain a network of cash deposits and withdrawal facilities, which our amendment calls for. However, this will not reverse the decline in access to cash. Much more needs to be done. People would not withdraw cash if they cannot spend it. To truly protect access to cash, we also need to promote cash acceptance by stores and other businesses. And by investing in our underutilised cash distribution network, businesses will be supported back to accepting cash payments. That is why our amendment also calls for the TUC to campaign with affiliates for a legal right to pay for goods and services in person using cash. So Congress, please support GMB's amendment to save our cash machines and the workers who maintain it. I second. Thank you.
CW, Andy Fury to move to support. Sorry.
President, Congress, Andy Fury, CW, to support composite motion C10 and urge Congress to get behind the amendment from the CW. Incredibly, since 2015, a total of 5,632 banks and building sites have closed, and this year alone, a further 500 have been announced for closure. This is a significant contributing factor impacted on vulnerable customers, and particularly the disabled and the elderly, who are less able to move to online banking and are effectively digitally disenfranchised. In fact, there is a significantly more pronounced impact in rural and low-income areas where people are more likely to need access to cash. To put our campaign into context, over £3 billion worth of cash transactions at post offices branches per month have been driven by the continued branch bank closures, highlighting the importance of the post office network within communities. In August alone, cash transactions at post offices totalled £3.34 billion, and that included personal cash withdrawals, personal cash deposits and business cash deposits. The post office network is currently 11,500 across the UK. It's the biggest retail network in the UK, with more branches than all the banks and building societies combined. Post Office has partnerships with 30 banks, building societies and credit unions, meaning that 99% of the UK's bank customers can access their accounts via the Post Office. Researchers found that visits to Post Office help drive another 400 million visitors to shops, restaurants, cafes and local businesses, equating to an estimate 1.1 billion in additional revenue for high street businesses, and that 99.7% of the UK's population live within 3 miles of a post office. So, as acknowledged by the London School of Economics report, post offices are particularly important economic pillars in rural communities, with more than a quarter serving as the last remaining shop in the village, supporting as many as 30 million visits each year in these branches. But the bad news is the post office is also in decline due to a lack of investment by government and gross mismanagement. MPs rarely hold back on their criticism of branches for closing branches in their constituency, and the government has dismantled the post office network through years of underfunding and backdoor privatisation. Therefore, at a time when we are witnessing the retreat of banks and the geography of the UK, it's clear post offices remain as a critical conduit for overcoming the banking gap for local societies and ensure they're not left isolated from vital banking and cash services. Congress, I would urge you to get behind this motion. The vulnerability of the post office network is acute, and the sustainability is on a knife edge, and it needs massive investment to protect and secure the cherished national institution that is part of the fabric of communities. Thanks very much, Congress.
Unite.
Thank you, President. Congress. Vanessa Williams, Unite the Union, speaking on support of the Composite for Finance and Legal Members. Congress. This is an important motion. The impact of the industry, which prioritises profiteering over communities and workers. Ever since the financial crash, there has been a steady drumbeat of announcements of bank branch closures. This year alone, Lloyds Bank has announced 22 closures, following on from 66 last year and 18 more from Halifax. They join the ever-growing casualty list, to name but a few. HSBC, 114 branches this year. Barclays, 68 branches. NatWest, 52 branches. Altogether, 5,162 banks and building society branches have closed in the UK since 2015. This is not a retreat from the high street, it is a complete abandonment. We face a retail banking industry where unchecked digital you know what I mean, means work is ever intensified. Where AI means surveillance of workers runs rampant in our workplaces. Where large groups of the population are frozen out and forgotten. 65% of UK consumers report needing regular access to cash in ATMs, including those over 65 who are more reliant on access to cash to pay for bills and other essentials. This is why Unite supports calls for universal service obligation, which legally obliges banks to provide cash in addition to digital offerings. Congress, finance is not a declining industry. The banks are digitally coining it in. Since the pandemic, the top banks have made more money than at a point since the financial crash. Congress, our Unite Finance workers are fighting back. Through our combines and in our workplaces, we are taking on low pay and digitalisation. Thank you, thank you. This motion is an important next step to return retail banks as community services for the many and not profiteering for the few. Please, Congress, support this motion. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Composite 10 is before you, Congress. Will all those in favour please show? Put your hands down. All those against? That is carried. I now call paragraph 5.1 to 5.18 and motion 77, National Trades Unions Support for Trades Council's Solidarity Work. The General Council supports the motion and it's to be moved by Liz Payne-Amadi on behalf of the Trades Council's conference, seconded by POA. And can NUJ and ASLEF stand by to also participate in the debate? Liz.
President, Congress, Liz Payne-Amadi, moving motion 77 from the National Trades Council's conference on behalf of the TUC JCC. Congress, I wasn't allowed, of course, by rule, to speak on Monday concerning the Trades Councils and their relations with this body. But today I can speak about the work that we do in our localities and our communities in support of every union and of every person living in those places across the country. It's a great privilege to stand here today. First time here, obviously first time speaker because of that, but before you clap, I want to tell you that it's almost 40 years to the day since I first walked into a Trades Council meeting in Scarborough representing NATFI as it was then in 1983. And of course, I walked into that meeting just a few months before the 150th anniversary of Tolpuddle and before the beginning of the Great Miners' Strike. And I learned from both of those what a huge difference the Trades Councils can make in our communities. Thank you. The Trades Councils have a unique role, bringing unions together, looking at the issues that face all of us in our workplaces, creating a picture of our locality and our community, building an understanding of our huge potential and what we can do together, and then, of course, getting on and doing just that. We bring our history, the history of working people and our class, into our communities. We bring our very, very powerful togetherness into our communities and our understanding, very deep understanding of the localities. We take our campaigns out, in stalls, on the streets, leafleting, meetings. We know our area, we know our workplaces, we know our issues. We know exactly what needs to be done where we are. And we take our campaigns into local government and we take them to our MPs everywhere. And it doesn't matter what the colour of those MPs is. It doesn't matter about their politics, because we take issues to them which say, basically, that you can never stand up in Parliament and say that the working people of your town didn't bring those issues to you. During the strikes last year from the 21st of June, my trades council in Taunton stood on 62 picket lines with RMT, CWU, UCU, NEU, Unison, PCS, Prospect, the doctors, the nurses. We brought support to the picket lines. We organised solidarity hours. We organised rallies, marches, demos in Taunton. Taunton isn't a hotbed of revolution, but make no mistake, it knows what trade unions are and it knows what they want. Now, I've got 48 seconds to tell you how you can help and support trades councils. Please communicate with us. Put all our secretaries on your mailing lists. Send us your releases. Please, regional secretaries, contact trades council secretaries. Let them know in good time what's going on. Because we can work for you, we can make a difference like you can't imagine if we have the information from you, and we will. We don't just talk about unity, we are unity. Solidarity with you all. Please support the trades councils, and we support you. Please support the motion.
POA to second.
President Congress Jackie Marshall, POA, happy to second this motion. Trades councils are an essential asset of the trade union movement, particularly those that are active. I'm an executive member of the Shropshire and Telford Trades Council. Our president, Ash Silverstone, is sat amongst the Unison delegation at Congress. Our Trades Council is active and in recent times have stood on many picket lines supporting those in dispute with their employers, but quite often it's only by chance that we've found out about the action. Likewise, we're unfortunate to have Stephen Yaxley Lennon living in our area, better known as Tommy Robinson, a British far-right anti-Islamic activist, convicted criminal, co-founder and former leader of the EDL, and political advisor to UKIP. When he and his supporters plan a march in our area, the Trades Council is always there in opposition. But other than gathering support from our local unions, we have no avenue to gain support from the wider trade union movement. If this motion is accepted by Congress, it would provide an avenue for all trades councils to support and partake in any dispute, march or rally, as they would have the details and be able to organise. I can relate to everything in this motion. Communication is poor and it desperately needs to improve. Policy of the POA is that every branch affiliates their local trades council, and on occasions it's been really difficult to find names and contact numbers. If this motion is passed, it will help to address this problem and will give trades councils greater opportunity to support those in disputes and support each other. Please support the motion.
NUJ. NUJ and then Aslef. Sorry, mate. Sorry.
Oh, it's a bit of a bum fight up here to support the trades councils, isn't it? Morning, Congress President David Nicholson from the National Union of Journalists, and I think there might be some buyers' regret in the hall over motion 76 on, what was it, 2 days ago? After hearing Liz explain what the solidarity trades councils give to us when we're in struggle, and that's why the NUJ want to support this motion to repay some of that solidarity work that the trades councils have done up and down the country when our members have been out on strike. And that's our members in the BBC, in local radio, fighting for their community news to be saved from the cuts that are going across BBC local radio news at the moment. And our members at Reach, It's not a toothpaste manufacturer, it's the company that owns the Daily Express, the Mirror, and in Wales, the Western Mail. Now, when our members in Reach went on strike, it was a catalyst for the young workers there. The young journalists joined the NUJ in their hundreds so that they could go on strike. And they were bowled over by the support they got on their picket lines, organised by the trades councils. They cajoled and persuaded all the unions to send along representatives to show their support and solidarity when our members were on strike. And for those young workers, it was a real lesson in the solidarity that the trade union movement shows each other. Now, in Wales, I'm on the General Council of the Wales TUC. We actually have 2 representatives from the trades councils on the General Council. So they find out all the information that's going on about disputes in Wales because they're there in the room. And then they go away and work really hard to make sure that our strikes are successful and our actions are well supported. And I think we should repay that and show the trades councils a bit of love and pass this motion, please. Thank you.
ASLEF.
Thank you, President. Congress, ASLEF, Andrew Hudd from ASLEF, rising to support. And Liz opened up her remarks when she was moving this motion that she was privileged to be here and speak to us today. Well, I'm privileged to be on the platform directly after her. She's a wonderful woman and has been a real ally to ASLEF in our dispute. Now, ASLEF, like many trade unions, have got the trades councils written through their rule book, and very recently, over the last few years, we've reinvigorated that rule and got activists into local trades councils, and that's been paid back in spades because those young activists have gone in and they've reinvigorated the councils, and the trade councils have been on every single ASLEF picket line since we've been in dispute for the last 18 months. ASLEF is not a big trade union. We haven't got the assets that the larger trade unions have. So when we get the trades councils distributing leaflets, turning up on our picket lines to make them bigger, a support, I mean, literally, we've had more supporters on our picket lines from trades councils than we have had pickets sometimes. And that, for young members and young strikers, those who haven't been on strike before, it's a real boost to their morale, and it's so vitally important. But we rely also as well, because we haven't got the boots on the ground, about distributing information about our strike and our activities and what the strike's about. And the trades councils have done a wonderful job about that. What this motion is asking for, by the way, if you've read it, is about getting trade unions to be more proactive in delivering information to the trades councils. Because if we have a more informed and educated members of movements and activists, then we can build those supports on the picket lines that are so vital to ASLEF and other trade unions of our size, but of course, every trade union. So it's really important we support this today, and also important that the trade unions get young members in and active into those trades councils. Please support.
Thank you, Delegate. Motion 77 is before you. Will all those in favour please show? Put your hands down. Those against? That is carried. I call paragraph 2.10 and motion 78, the Risks e-newsletter. The General Council support the motion, and I will call on Liz Snape to explain the position on behalf of the General Council after it's been moved by TSSA and seconded by ASLEF.
President, Congress, Frank Ellis, TSSA, moving motion 78 on Risks e-newsletter. This is a simple motion, so I will be very, very brief. On June the 6th, the TUC wrote to unions to say that the TUC was no longer able to continue with the weekly Risks newsletter. The e-newsletter goes out to an audience of thousands of health and safety reps with union and other news and on health and safety matters, campaigns and legal updates. The TUC email stated that Thompson Solicitors had made the decision to terminate its sponsorship so that though that the TUC was no longer able to fund it. In our discussions with Thompson's, it seems that this is not quite the case, and they are keen to continue to support health and safety in some form or other. We consider that the e-newsletter and Hazards magazine are essential to our members and call for it or something similar to be reinstated. Congress, please support the motion.
Seconded by Aslef.
Congress. President, Dawn Stewart, Aslef, seconding motion 78, the Risks newsletter. Congress. Health and safety reps in our regions do incredible work. They are the front line, supporting our members and keeping them safe in their workplaces. They are an invaluable asset to the union movement, and they deserve so much credit. The Risks e-newsletter is key to supporting those reps. In all the work that they do, it provides them information on a wide variety of topics that keeps health and safety reps up to date and informed. It also provides very needed self-esteem uplift of sharing good practice and union victories across our movement. The cancellation of Risks is a huge loss to our movement and to the reps. Congress, we need publications like this desperately. Without them, health and safety reps will lose an incredible tool. And for some, it's the only source of support that they have. Please support this motion and its aims. I second. Thank you.
Before I take the vote, I call on Liz Snape to give the General Counsel's explanation. Liz.
Good morning. Liz Snape speaking on behalf of the General Counsel, who support the motion with this explanation. The motion draws attention to the decision to cease publication of the Risks newsletter following funding pressures. It also calls upon the TUC to consult with Hazards magazine to maximise support for the magazine. It also urges trades councils, union branches and safety reps to subscribe to Hazards magazine. A need for additional funding for Risks was identified back in 2018, and generous support was given by Thompson's, valued supporters of the TUC and to many unions. And the TUC is grateful for that continued and generous contribution from Thompson's. Since then, however, efforts have been made to secure additional funding that is needed, and these efforts will continue. In the meantime, later this year, the TUC will be launching a new trade union website for reps. This will provide a one-stop shop and a source of information for all union reps, but in particular our incredible health and safety reps. And with this explanation, the General Counsel supports the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Moving on to the vote on motion 78. Will all those in favour please show? Your hands down. All those against? That is carried. I call motion 79, supporting the Ron Todd Foundation as a movement. The General Counsel support the motion, and I will be calling on Kate Bell to explain the position on behalf of the General Counsel after it's been moved by the Bakers Union and seconded by POA. Sarah.
For the final time this week, President, Congress, Sarah Woolley, General Secretary of the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union, moving motion 79. Congress, solidarity is more than just words, it is action. And the Ron Todd Foundation is no stranger to acting to support our members throughout the movement by offering solidarity during their time of need. Whether that's to have a brew and a chat, a bed for the night, the ability to wash clothes, have a hot meal or a shower, or just a friendly face to talk to. The Ron Todd House is currently providing, and future hubs that will be possible through voting this motion through and acting on it as branches and regions by being part of the 500, could provide much needed community space at a time when significant numbers of our members and the wider community are impacted by the cost of living crisis, poverty and inequality. Nowhere else in our movement offers this type of solidarity. Nowhere else in our movement has their doors open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for real practical hands-on support for our members during their time of need. Congress, solidarity is not something that happens in isolation. It begins through developing authentic relationships where conversations upskill, empower, motivate and mobilise. Sparking movements, doing things with people, not for people. The Ron Todd Foundation, built on the foundations of and to remember a fantastic past leader of our movement, is an integral part of our movement, and it is our responsibility to support its work, increase the possibilities and outreach of it, and ensure that our members now and in the future have a place to turn to for practical solidarity when they need it. Its mission is the prevention or relief of poverty and the promotion of equality and diversity, and they strive to achieve this through building the Ron Todd Network, the Solidarity Education Programme and the annual Ron Todd Lecture and Awards. To finish conference, in 2022, the Foundation, led by the amazing Bianca Todd, supported over 20,000 trade union members. Nearly 2,000 of those were from our union. Just think how many more of our members could be supported by the movement really getting behind the foundation and helping to build it. Solidarity in action. Please support.
POA to second, Steve.
President, Congress, pleased to be back up with my newfound confidence in moving this. I hope it's not the kiss of death or second in this motion. But the reality is, we invested in the Ron Todd Foundation many years ago, actually. And I think Sarah said about Bianca leading on this particular issue. I went and visited Bianca in Northampton. And I've got to say, I saw firsthand how well this was run. And Sarah mentioned about many trade union members going through for a shower, for help with rent, and different things. And whilst I was there, I saw trade union members coming through the door and being helped, whether it was a shower, as Sarah said, or whether it was getting assistance with rent. Now, the POA, like many unions, I suppose, have got a road welfare fund. But not every trade union member wants to come forward to their own trade union or employer for that assistance because they might be embarrassed. But I've got to say, 2,000 of our members passed through the doors of the Ron Todd Foundation in one way or another for that assistance. So please support this motion because I think it's vitally important. As Sarah said, 20,000 people going through their doors in 1 year. So that's why we invested in it and very proud to invest in it over the last 5 or 6 years. It's so worthwhile. Please don't neglect it because the great Ron Todd of Transport and General Workers Union would be ever so proud of what his granddaughter has actually achieved in doing this. So support the motion. Thank you, Conference.
I now call Kate Bell, Assistant General Secretary, to give the General Council's explanation.
Thank you, President. Kate Bell, Assistant General Secretary of the TUC, speaking on behalf of the General Council, which supports the motion with this explanation. The Ron Todd Foundation works to tackle poverty, and as we've heard this week, that work is more important than ever. To support efforts to tackle poverty, the TUC affiliates to the End Child Poverty Coalition, which brings together a wide range of anti-poverty campaign organisations. And this helps us to deal with the many requests we receive to affiliate to individual campaigns. The TUC is happy to circulate information about the Ron Todd Foundation, but would want to respect individual unions' own democratic processes about affiliation to any organisation, including this one. And with this explanation, please support the motion.
Congress, motion 79 is before you. Will all those in favour please show? Put your hands down. All those against? That is carried. Congress, you'll see we've been joined on the platform by our final guest speaker. Luke Triangle has been the International TUC's Acting General Secretary since April this year and is a powerful advocate of international trade unionism. He spent almost 30 years in his native Belgium's biggest union federation, where he was heavily involved in the foundation of the European Works Councils, allowing thousands of workers' representatives to challenge companies at a transnational level. He then moved on to the European level and was instrumental in the creation of Industrial Europe, which he became the leader of in 2016. He is a strong and indispensable advocate for workers' rights, together with Industrial Europe in 39 European countries. In 1 month, at a special Congress, he will be confirmed as the full General Secretary of the International TUC, having stood for election on a platform of revitalising democracy and representation in our global movement as the best response to the many challenges that we all face. Luke, you're very welcome, and I invite you to address Congress.
Good morning. Thank you, Maria, for the introduction. Thank you, Paul, for inviting me to this important TUC Congress. Dear delegates, dear friends, dear comrades, the ITUC, the International Trade Union Confederation, we represent altogether 200 million workers in 167 countries and territories. And it's great to be here with you today in Liverpool, a city with a long history of workers and trade union fights and wins. The world, dear comrades, is at a crossroad of converging crises. Global shocks to economies and societies offset by the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine have worsened pre-existing vulnerabilities and undermined the slow progress that we had seen at global level in the fight against poverty and inequality. Across the world, we see social regression rather than progress in the last years. Authoritarian government responses to the different crises are on the rise, and the interest of companies continue to predominate over the well-being of the majority of the population in the world. Besides the direct and indirect consequences of war in a difficult geopolitical context, workers have also suffered from the climate crisis, the food and energy crisis, and high inflation, which has undermined their purchasing power and pushing many of them further into poverty. Interest rate rises have further worsened the debt crisis in many countries around the world and threatening public services and the much-needed social spending for a human-centered recovery. The state of social justice in the world should shame us all. The top 1% has taken 38% of all wealth accumulated since the 90s, whereas the bottom 50% has gained only 2%, and 685 million people live in extreme poverty. Over 50 million workers are in modern slavery still today, and at least 160 million children remain in child labor, with numbers going up again after decades of decline. Every year, 3 million workers die, and hundreds of millions are injured or made ill because of work. More than 60% is working in the informal economy without any labor protection, and 4 billion are excluded from social protection. The pay gap between men and women is still today 20%. These sobering numbers can surely leave none of us untouched. It is an unacceptable reality. We have to do better, and we have to do much better, and we have to fight for that in unity, in solidarity across the world. The converging crises that we are facing need an all-encompassing response that we build more sustainable and resilient societies, an agenda with social justice at the center. The ITUC Congress last year launched our global trade union demand for a new social contract, which jobs, rights, living wages, social protection, equality, and inclusion for all at the center. This global new social contract is our program to create decent and climate-friendly jobs for all, with just transition at the center. This new social contract is about our global demands on workers' rights and social protection, living wages and equal pay policies. This contract is also about inclusion, equality, and our opposition against any form of discrimination. World military expenditure grew by 19% over the last decades to reach a record high of over $2 trillion. We are putting all our money into war and destruction, worsening division rather than building a shared common global security system based on social justice for all. Well, dear friends, we need to fight for this better world all together. Attacks on workers' rights are on the rise everywhere in the world, and there are no regions anymore where we can take workers' rights for granted. The ITUC, we launched in June this year our 10th edition of the ITUC Global Rights Index. The index shows us clearly that the problem of attacks on workers' rights is big and getting bigger. The 2023 index provides shocking evidence that the foundations of democracy are under attack, with a clear link between workers' rights being upheld and the strength of our democracy. The erosion of one amounts to the degradation of the other. Europe has long considered itself as a bastion of democracy and workers' rights. However, the index shows that this is changing. Workers in Belarus and Turkey, and they are here, face surveillance, imprisonment, and brutality from regimes that share autocratic practices. Working people in the Netherlands and Belgium have seen a tightening of restrictions and refusal by governments and employers to negotiate with trade union representatives. In France, lawful protests demanding dialogue with trade unions on an alternative for the Macron pension reform were met with vicious police beatings, indiscriminated arrests, and tear gas. And also in this country, the United Kingdom, union busting, attempts to introduce legislation curtailing the right to strike and protest, and violations of collective bargaining agreements have become systematic and led to the country's rating dropping to 4 on a scale of 5. 4 means systematic violations of rights. The right to strike is part of our fight for a real democratic society. Your fight is also our fight. Across the world, in both high-income and low-income countries, even though working people have faced an historic cost of living crisis and spiraling inflation driven by corporate greed, governments have cracked down on the right to collectively negotiate wage rises and take strike action. 9 out of 10 countries violated the right to strike in the world. It is a global fight for maintaining this right. 8 out of 10 countries violated the right of collective bargaining. 3 out of 4 countries excluded working people from the right to establish or join a trade union. As example, Burundi, Haiti, India, Turkey, and the Emirates were among those countries that excluded working people from union representation. The right to free speech and assembly was restricted in nearly 1 out of 2 countries, often resulting in protesting workers facing police brutality. In Iran, teachers were arrested and beaten by the police for taking part in this year's May Day demonstrations. 3 out of 4 countries impeded the registration of unions or banned them, including, again, in Belarus, Myanmar, Hong Kong, and Guatemala. Workers were arrested and detained in 69 countries, and in 2 out of 3 countries, working people had no or restricted access to justice. Workers experienced violence in 44 countries, and unfortunately, we have evidence of killed trade unionists in at least 8 countries. We see the line between autocracies and democracies blurring. When dialogue between states and citizens breaks down, when nations flirt with autocracy to pass unpopular laws, when parliaments are put aside, when governments deploy state forces to quell lawful resistance, democracy is on the line and working people suffer the consequences. To reinforce the fabric of our societies, to renew and establish democracy, and to support working people, we need that new social contract. It will be more crucial as ever to restore democracy, equality, decency, and to give workers their fair share of economic growth. In many countries, we notice that trust in governments is broken and that the far right is stepping into the breach to sow division and further threaten fundamental liberties. This can only be stopped by a new social contract that can rebuild trust and ensure that our democracies are fit for purpose to meet the needs of working people today. But it also means international trade union solidarity, dear colleagues. In a world where capital and companies are global, where our income and rights are systematically attacked by governments and employers, the way forward for trade unions is not to return back to isolation. We must strengthen our international cooperation and action, and that's what our members expect from us. Workers of the world, unite. Workers of the world, unite. That was nearly 200 years ago the slogan of the first trade unions. The global trade union movement, led by the ITUC, will act in solidarity. An attack on one of us is an attack on all. The voice of the ITUC will be loud and clear against any violation. The TUC is one of the strongest trade union confederations in the world. We count on the TUC to be part of this international solidarity. Long live the TUC, long live the ITUC, long live solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that speech, Luke. It was very good for you to address our Congress, and we look forward to working closely with you and all our global international colleagues in the international TUC. Workers of the world, unite indeed. Now, Congress, we're on to emergency motions. We've got 2 emergency motions. I'm going to take emergency motion 1 first, which is about urgent steps following the unprecedented public response to railway ticket office closures consultation. The General Council support the motion. It's going to be moved by RMT and seconded by TSSA. And as I indicated earlier, I'll be taking several unions to speak in this debate. As people will remember, this was also a subject of the Disability Conference motion that came to Congress earlier on this week. And we didn't have a lot of time to discuss it then, so there are going to be some additional speakers who indicated in that, under that motion. But first of all, moved by RMT. John.
President, Congress, good morning. My name is John Leach. I'm from the National Union of Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers. with the responsibility this morning to move this emergency resolution, and an emergency it very much is. Quite rightly, on Monday earlier this week, we were able to take the TUC Disabled Members Conference resolution on this matter. And this isn't a case of two bites of the same cherry. This is a situation that warrants our attention twice this week. This is a live, moving situation which is happening right now as we're in here at this conference. Not only am I moving this resolution with you this morning, but our General Secretary, Mick Lynch, is down in London at the Transport Select Committee. It's already met this morning, giving clear and precise evidence that this has to stop and cannot be allowed to happen. But there's been an adjournment debate this morning in the House of Commons in Parliament as well on this matter, which was very well attended, with cross-party support now against this diabolical proposal to close every single ticket office in this country. There is over 100,000 people now signed a petition calling for another debate in Parliament, and on top of that, we've had nearly 700,000 heading towards 1 million contributions in the public consultation against it. And not only that, and I should make absolutely no apology for this, and why would I? I salute our membership, the 20,000 RMT members who've been on strike over 20 times this year against these cuts. And we'll be on strike again if we need to. You better believe it. But let's just have a little look about what this is all about. And let's remember what Harriet said earlier about that pre-vaccine period, going back to the pandemic, because this is where this all comes from. What we've got is a government on a revenge power trip, seeking to redress and carry out a smash and grab raid against the railway, my members' terms and conditions, and a safe, accessible railway service for the travelling public. Only they're not going to get away with it. At that time, my members, our members in the RMT, kept Britain moving with a disproportionately high impact of the pandemic upon us, and this isn't saying anything about anyone else that went through the national emergency that took place, but we lost a lot of people. And now, as I say, we've got a smash and grab raid against our T's and C's, and an appalling proposal to close every single ticket office in this country, 948 of them. They're not going to get away with it. A spiteful, vengeful attack on my union and the other railway unions that have been involved in this fight back. But what's the real story? And this is why the TUC Disabled Members Conference very correctly picked this up. This isn't just about new technology. If it was, we probably wouldn't even be on strike. As we've often said in the media, RMT and the other railway unions have delivered new technology. We always have from the days of steam trains and top hats. Why wouldn't we? The most modern signalling technology, we deliver it. Our members operate it every single day. No, this is actually about getting rid of 2,500 frontline uniformed men and women who provide a first-class service to the people who need it. And that's why we're not going to give up till it's done. Now, the resolution and an emergency, as is always the case with us, is a practical proposal, a list of tasks that we're asking the TUC to support. It talks about an urgent meeting on the 31st with passenger watchdogs, a lobby of Parliament, coordinates with affiliates to explore options for providing legal support to challenges to the closures, and to seek an urgent meeting with the government demanding the withdrawal of the closures. And I'm sure everyone in here will get behind that. And we've got the consultation process been extended to the 31st of October. But the real message on top of all of that is this. They have completely and utterly underestimated the opposition to this. Led by our union in the first and forefront at the beginning of last year when we balloted our membership. As I said before from the rostrum, this is the biggest fight my union's been involved in, not just ticket offices, but the fight for a pay rise and the attacks against our terms and conditions and our jobs since time began. The biggest dispute since the RMT and its forerunner unions were set up in 1872. And we're in it till we win it. They have totally underestimated what we're about. We have reballoted our membership 3 times and we'll do it again if needs be. This is a fight for all of us. We ask for your complete support in this emergency resolution. We're sure we'll get it, and that way we can continue to take the fight to the enemy. What an absolute disgraceful proposal to deny disabled access, to attack people's jobs. Only this is it. They ain't going to get away with it. We're in it till we win it. Solidarity!
To be seconded by TSSA, and I'm also going to be taking in the debate ASLEF, CWU, NUJ, NEU and Unison. TSSA.
President, Congress, Peter Pendle, Transport Salaried Staff Association, delighted to be seconding the RMT's emergency motion. First of all, I want to thank all of you for the support you have given the transport unions during the campaign and for responding to the consultation. Almost 700,000 responses to the consultation is incredible, more than double of any other consultation. It's an indication of how cross the travelling public are about the proposals to close almost every ticket office. And now, as has just been said, over 100,000 people have signed the petition against the closures and demanding a debate in Parliament. Now, we have to look at against the background of the attacks by the Tory government on the rail industry. Sunak hates trains. He would rather fly from London to Southampton than get the train. And on Monday, he was quoted in the London Evening Standard saying it's right to close ticket offices, despite almost 700,000 responses opposing the closure in the consultation. Now, I'm not sure a lot of Tory MPs in marginal constituencies will think that's such a good idea now. So please, if you haven't already done so, send them a note. It is, as has just been said, all part of a longer-term strategy to run down the rail industry, cut costs, sack staff and move passengers onto roads. So some of the figures. You might have heard much about only 13% of tickets are sold from ticket offices. Maybe nationally, but not in Manchester, not in Liverpool, where the figure is much closer to 50%. And, as you've already heard, not for those with disabilities. You heard earlier in Congress how much they rely on ticket offices. Are those 13% of passengers not important? Well, even WH Smith's on railway stations has staff tills next to the automatic checkouts. But what does 13% actually equate to? 150 million rail journeys in the past year, 150 million tickets sold from ticket offices. In addition, many passengers purchase their season tickets at ticket offices as well, meaning that as many as another 210 million journeys stem from dedicated offices. That's up to 360 rail journeys that come from sales in ticket offices. Moving staff out of ticket offices and into multi-skilled customer help roles, the number of overall staff will be reduced by 2,000 jobs, meaning that there will actually be many fewer staff about on stations, almost 2,000 job losses. That's why some of the train operators are intended to replace existing staff with mobile teams who will provide limited cover at certain hours on the day. So no one at many stations most of the time. Congress, we don't trust the government. They call the tune to the rail delivery group and the train operating companies. They'll move all of the people onto concourses now, and in 2 or 3 years' time, they'll come back and they'll take them away with even more job losses. Congress, thank you again for your support during the consultation. Now please back the emergency motion. Let's stop these ticket office closures.
Aslef.
Thank you, President. Congress, Simon Weller Aslef. This is a deliberate and corrosive attack by this government. Empty and unstaffed stations won't save money. All they will deliver is a hostile environment to the most vulnerable people in our travelling public. We will see stations, when they're unstaffed, become pretty desolate places. And those stations then become an attraction for criminal activity. But the Tories don't care about that. As a train driver, a former train driver for 20 years, I know that when you take away staff, you import more risk. And the risk here is to the most vulnerable. I would commend what the RMT and the TSSA and the disability campaigning groups have managed to achieve with this astonishing level of public engagement. But the reality is, people are fed up with the continued attacks on our national infrastructure, and this is it again. It's time we're going to have to defend our own. Please support.
CW. Rob.
President, Congress, Rob Witherspoon, Communication Workers Union, to stand in solidarity with the RMT in opposition to these ticket office closures. And when we see employers, with the government backing them, spending billions to prolong disputes while slashing jobs and services, we know this is not about efficiency. It's about trying to break unions. It's about cutting services to the bone and degrading provision to the disabled. And this is part of a coordinated attack on our national infrastructure by people who know the price of everything and the value of nothing. In our postal industries, we face the same problems. You've already heard about the decimation of our post office network due to a 2/3 funding cut over a decade. And in Royal Mail, failed privatisation and gross financial mismanagement has led to billions being paid out to shareholders, which has led to a very similar attempt to close the majority of customer service points, which are vital for parcel collection and other postal services. Now, we called for the public to lobby against that, and that plan was halted, but it's returned as a plan to close them by stealth, by reducing hours to the bare minimum. Now, this also threatens employment to long-standing employees, many of whom can no longer perform postal deliveries and have disabilities of their own. So it's a double attack on the disabled. So across society as a whole, Congress, we must finally bury this permanent austerity mindset that makes us all poorer and tears apart the fabric of our society. We stand with the RMT, we stand with the TSSA, we stand with the railway workers, disabled people, the elderly and passengers opposing these ticket office closures and against the managed decline of our public services. Congress, please support.
NUJ.
Thank you, President. Congress, Natasha Hurst, National Union of Journalists.
There's still a fundamental message that too many people just don't understand. Disabled people have the same human rights as everybody else, and our lives are every bit as valuable as anybody else's. And it shouldn't need saying, and it's genuinely frightening that we live in a society where those in power don't agree with that. The inequalities and injustices that disabled people face are systemic. We live and work in a world that is designed to exclude us. It is designed to take power away from us and to put it in the hands of those who believe that we are nothing but a burden on society. And as a result, our human rights and our lives are seen as dispensable. And the closure of the ticket offices is an example of that ableism in practice. And learn that word, Congress, use it, call it out when you see it, ableism. Under the UN Convention on the Rights of Disabled People, Article 19 sets out our right to independent living, and that means that disabled people should have the access and the assistance to go about our daily lives with the same freedom as anybody else, in ways that everybody else can take for granted. Any disabled person should be able to just turn up and travel as they wish, whenever they wish. And this applies to people with invisible impairments as well as visible impairments. Closing ticket offices, we've heard, makes rail travel inaccessible and less safe, and it is a clear breach of our human rights. Now, we know this, and we have made our opposition absolutely clear. The transport bosses know this. The government knows this, and they do not care. Congress, we have to make them care. Accessible travel is vital for disabled people and so many others. It's an intersectional issue. And solidarity to our comrades who have been fighting so hard to protect those services. And thank you for ensuring that the barriers facing disabled people and other minoritized groups have gone to the core of your campaigns. But as a movement, we know that when one group comes under attack, all of our rights are at risk, and nobody is safe from a government that is willing to gleefully abuse its power in this way. We have to stop them. We cannot let them win. Congress, please support.
Thank you.
Colin Johnson, NEU. President, Conference. More than 680,000 individuals responded to the consultation on the proposed closure of the ticket offices, a proposal that would see more than 2,200 jobs being lost and a lack of any staff presence at many stations. The consultation period, which had been extended until September 1st, gave the public a chance to show their total objection to a plan that, if it were to go ahead, would unfairly discriminate against both disabled and elderly people. In Worcestershire, NEU members have worked together with RMT and the Trades Council to raise awareness of the plan, that if it were enacted would likely cause multiple infringements of the Equality Act very quickly. We know that so many disabled people at the moment are thoughtfully and carefully assisted by rail staff to get on and off their trains safely. But did you know that the 13 rail companies have had to produce equality impact assessments, the details of which are very alarming? They talk of increased personal security and safety concerns relating to the lack of tactile surfaces at stations. This could result in more serious accidents, if not deaths. The assessments talk about the possibility of increased hate speech and hate crime at stations and on trains at busy times. Mention was made of ticketing machines that are inaccessible to blind, partially sighted people and wheelchair users. It was noted also that if ticket machines are closed, so will be the waiting rooms and the toilets. Recently, there was an excellent cartoon in Private Eye that showed an elderly person attempting to buy a ticket from an info hub. The text read, "Okay, one more time. Go home and log on to our website from your computer. Create an account and purchase your ticket with your credit or debit card. Download the ticket onto your smartphone and then come back at the allocated time." Just what part of this easier and more convenient method don't you get? Disabled trade unionists uphold the social model of disability, which is all about the barriers faced by people with impairments. This plan to close the ticket offices is an additional barrier, and a big one at that. Disabled people's organisations should be consulted and listened to when they say that disabled people will not be able to confidently travel due to lack of support and access, and their lives will be hugely impacted. On my way to conference, travelling on a very crowded train to Birmingham New Street with a large case, an RMT member asked me if I needed support to change trains later. Now that will all go if we have less staff on trains and on platforms and in ticket offices. We must do everything we can to block the proposed changes, as they are discriminatory and ultimately motivated by profit. Conference, support the motion.
Unison.
President, Congress, Angela Hamilton supporting this motion on behalf of Unison. Congress, as a disabled person, I face difficulties every time I leave the house. These difficulties aren't because I'm disabled, but because of the barriers that society puts in our way. Everything from stairs to colour contrast make life harder for disabled people than it is for non-disabled people. And don't get me started on the prejudicial attitudes we face in the workplace and in education, and by this Tory government every single day of our lives. A government who would rather we sat in the corner and just waited to die. For decades, we've been fighting for a fairer society, more equal for disabled people, and we've had some success. But Congress, this government have set the progress back years, and this plan is just another way of isolating and excluding disabled people. Unison has around 350,000 disabled members, and not one of them support this. Wheelchair users, blind and visually impaired people, people with a learning disability, and people like me who often get told we don't look disabled are not just angry, but we're frightened about what will happen when ticket offices close. My son Joe works for HMRC. His job means he can be sent anywhere in the world to any department. So far he's been to York and Sheffield. He's active in his union. He's an intelligent and hard-working young man. He even ran the Great North Run last weekend. He also has autism, but his autism doesn't define him. But it does mean he has to be prepared for if something goes wrong. He knows that if there's a problem when he's travelling for work, he can go to the ticket office. He even checks where the ticket office is in the train stations before he leaves. If they close the ticket offices, he and thousands of others like him will struggle to travel by train. If they close the ticket offices, he and thousands of others like him will lose their independence and become increasingly isolated and secluded. His mental health will suffer, and he could even lose his job. Congress closing ticket offices isn't just another cynical attack on jobs by the Tory government. It's an attack on the safety of women, older people and disabled people. Unison are 100% opposed to these plans and 100% behind the campaign to keep ticket offices open. And that campaign is not over yet. We have to keep on fighting. So please, for people like me, for people like Joe, the hundreds of thousands of disabled members in my union and the millions of disabled people in this country, oppose the tax on our services and support this motion. Thank you.
Congress, I'll now take the vote on emergency motion 1. All those in favour? Put your hands down. Those against? That is passed unanimously. TUC Congress has spoken. Stop the ticket office closures. Support the services to all the travelling public. Right, moving on to the next emergency motion, important issue of the collapse of Wilko, Save the High Street. The General Council supports the motion to be moved by GMB, seconded by Osdor.
President Congress, Carol Robertson of the GMB. I am a Wilko rep and I've been a Wilko worker for more than 20 years. I did not want to have to make this speech. Wilko said that it was a family firm. That meant it was run by a family. But it's the workers that really feel like a family. And yesterday, this family heard the worst possible news. Every Wilko store will close by the end of the month. Our distribution centres will close at the end of the week. You will have read that 12,500 jobs will be lost. To me, that is 12,500 colleagues, friends, GMB sisters and brothers. 12,500 people who are now asking themselves how they will make ends meet. And Congress, we know that customers will suffer too. They are losing a budget retailer at the height of a cost of living crisis. Wilko is part of our communities, and the loss of Wilko from the high street will make these communities poorer. The blame lies at one door. Wilko's senior management ran the company into the ground. They ignored warnings that a serious turnaround plan was needed, and Congress let shareholders take dividends of £77 million out of the company over the last 10 years. £77 million while they told us there was no money for a decent pay claim. Congress, I am heartbroken, but I am also angry that they have stolen our future. And do you know who will pay for the collapse of Wilko's? You will, I will, we all will. It's the taxpayer that will pay the cost of making Wilko workers redundant. And thousands of Wilko workers have under 2 years' service, so they will not even get statutory redundancy. The GMB estimates that more than 25 million will be paid by the public, by you and me, in redundancy costs. The system is set up to subsidise job losses. TUC does not even apply to employees of a company in liquidation. If anything comes out of the ashes, then we need change. There will come a time to demand these changes, and we'll be asking you for support. Wilko's was not the first, and it will not be the last. We must all come together to save the high street. But for now, I am focused on our members. We tried so hard to find a future for Wilko. Now we are representing our members individually and collectively. We are still working to make sure they are paid what they are due and to try to find them alternative employment. We owe them that much. I want to say to the TUC, thank you for accepting this emergency motion. To our sister retail union Ulster, thank you for supporting it. And to all delegates in this hall, please show your support for Wilko workers and support this motion. Thank you.
Paddy Lillis from Osdor to second.
President, Congress, Paddy Lillis Osdaw seconding this important emergency motion on the collapse of Wilko, Save Our High Streets. Congress, firstly on behalf of all Osdaw members, I want to start with a message to the 12,500 Wilko workers. Carl, you and your union GMB have our absolute support and unwavering solidarity as you face the devastating outcome from Wilko. We stand with you, and we stand with every worker who fears that their workplace, their job, will be next on the line. Congress, there are 3 million retail workers in the UK. 3 million people serving our communities, working hard to feed their families and pay their bills every day. And 3 million who worked during the pandemic to ensure the country had food on the table. But too often, they and their jobs are treated as disposable by employers, by administrators, and by this despicable government. Congress, none of us in Ulster will ever forget the collapse of Woolworths in 2009. 27,000 jobs overnight lost. Absolute devastation for our members, just like in Wilko. They were loyal, hard-working, and many of them had long service. Ulster fought for our members all the way to the European Court of Justice. We fought against a loophole that cheated our members out of proper consultation, and I'm pleased to say that Labour has pledged to close that loophole in government. But it sickens me that here we are, nearly 15 years later, and workers are still being put through hell. And time again, with an employment rights framework that fails to protect them, with administration law that puts them at the back of the queue, with a government that fails to act and fails to care, and as our high streets dwindle and die. But it doesn't have to be this way. We do have a choice. Ulster is proposing a comprehensive plan for the future of retail work, a new economic framework, replacing our outdated business rates system to level the playing field for online and high street businesses, proper funding for our local authorities to make their high streets places that people can access and that people want to visit, and better pay and secure work for retail workers with a new deal, including stronger redundancy protections, sustained investment in skills and safeguards and automation. All of this can be done, and all of this, colleagues, must be done. It's time to act. It's time to protect jobs. It's time to protect workers and to protect our communities. Please support this important emergency.
Taking the vote on emergency motion 1, all those in favour, put your hands up. Hands down. Those against? Another unanimous vote. We send our TUC solidarity to the Wilko workers. Congress, now I have to draw your attention to Appendix 3 from page 74 of the General Council report. That's the TUC accounts. Unfortunately, the auditor is not able to be present today because of ill health, but she has provided assurances to the Executive Committee Finance Working Group. Does Congress accept the accounts as set out in the appendix? Right. I understand that CW would like to raise a point of order. Can they come to the stage now?
President, Congress, Tony Cairns Communication Workers Union, to raise a point of order. We're going to go away from here, I think, as a united movement. But we wanted to raise a serious matter. We've been made aware this morning that the TUC gave accreditation to Sun journalists to attend this Congress. Now, the Sun, for decades, has been an enemy of the working class, an overtly racist paper that did irreparable damage to the people of this city. And we think it is pretty insensitive to have invited him to what is a private event. Pretty insensitive to have invited him to a private event in this city. And we would like an explanation, which we will follow up in writing, as to who made that decision and why, and make sure it doesn't happen again.
I ask the General Secretary to respond.
Well, thank you for the question and making the point, Tony, and the opportunity actually to clarify the issue. Although I have to say, in the spirit of comradeship, I am disappointed it was tweeted before I had the opportunity to provide that clarity, but I want to set out that clarity for this Congress. The one Sun journalist was accredited for this year's Congress. That's been the case at successive Congresses because, in line with policy from the National Union of Journalists, we don't have standing policy to refuse accreditation to journalists. However, and this is the important point, and I want Congress to be absolutely clear, that journalists did not attend Congress, and I suspect part of the reason they didn't attend Congress is that I made it clear, I have made it publicly clear, I've made it clear on the broadcast media, I wouldn't do interviews with the Sun, I would refuse to take questions at the press conference from the Sun, and the TUC will provide no content to the Sun in any way, shape or form. That will always be the case while I'm General Secretary of this organisation. In fact, it was the case when Francis was General Secretary of this organisation, and that will be the case going forward at the TUC. Now, I am more than happy to review the policy around press accreditation. I think it's right to do that in consultation with the NUJ, but I want Congress to be assured I will never forget the 97. This city will never forget the 97. Congress will never forget the 97. I hope that provides assurance. Thank you.
Delegates, we are moving to the end of the Congress. A few things to do before, but I just want to say at this point, it's important to send our solidarity to the victims of the terrible floods in Libya, where we understand over 5,000 people have now died due to the terrible impact of climate change. I know Congress will join with me in sending our solidarity. Thank you. Delegates, that completes the final business of Congress. I now ask Congress to adopt the General Council report. Is that agreed? Right, we really are nearly finished. I just ask for your attention for a little bit longer. I now wish to make a couple of votes of thanks to those who've contributed to the smooth running of Congress. This will be brief, but they are sincere. I would like to start by thanking Sue Ferns for her role as Vice President. Thank you, Sue. Oh, where is she? She was over there. She was over there a minute ago. Oh, she's waving. Hi, Sue. Also to all the other General Council members for helping keep our speakers on time and contributing on behalf of the General Council. Thank you. I'd like to move a vote of thanks to all the staff here at the ACC for all they've done to ensure that Congress has run smoothly. And to all the wonderful stewards for their assistance during the week. And the people behind the scenes, the verbatim reporters, the tellers, the stage crew from QED, and the musicians who've worked so hard throughout this week. Congress, it is now time to say farewell to colleagues leaving the General Council. Firstly, retiring from the General Council is Kevin Courtney of the NEU. Kevin, please come up and accept your gold badge. Kevin, invite you to say a few words.
President Conference, I started teaching in September 1983. I'm retiring in September 2023, 40 years later, and this is my last speech to Congress. I've never retired before, and it's a bit weird, but I am very pleased to be getting that gold badge. Thank you very much, Congress.
trades unionism and the struggle for the working class education have been lodestars throughout my life. Both my granddads were coal miners, NUM members in the South Wales coalfield. My mum's dad, Snowy, died of emphysema and pneumoconiosis, aged 51. My mum and dad fought for compensation as an honour to him when Labour introduced the scheme in 1997. My dad's mum fought for him not to work underground. She got him an apprenticeship at a garage in Talbot Green. He became a lorry mechanic and a member of the AEU, now Unite. My mum left school at 14, worked as a seamstress. Then after me and my brother arrived, she worked as a school cleaner and a dinner lady. She was a member of NUPE, now Unison. My mum spent so much time on flashcards and reading schemes with me as a child. I was the first person in my wider family to go to university. I loved my mum and dad. They did so much for me and my brother and for the wider community. They were the salt of the earth. And we all know in this room, working class people of all races, all faiths, all nationalities that are also the salt of the earth. They have aspiration and talent and love, but the privileged, the billionaires, they really don't see that working class people matter. No real person involved, as they said in Succession. So I've spent my life, as you have, in a fight for our class, through politics, through trades unionism, and through education. And I feel so lucky to have been able to do it, and so lucky to have you as my trades union comrades. I've enjoyed it at every level, as a workplace rep at my school, Camden School for Girls, as a branch secretary working with other unions in Camden and across London, as vice chair of TUC when that was the TUC region, in senior roles in the NEU and on the General Council. Like you, I'm ambitious for our movement. Like you, I always want us to be able to do more. I always want to plan to do more and to do better. But saying we want to do better isn't saying we haven't done well. And in the last year, our movement has done so well to fight for working class living standards. We all did so well during COVID, keeping our members and our communities much safer than if we just left it in the hands of the Tories. These are victories for our movement. They are victories for you. And I know you're going to score many more victories in the future. Up the workers, down with this government that has so failed working people. Long live the TUC and the workers' movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Also retiring from the General Council is Diana Holland from Unite. Diana, please come up. To address us.
Thank you, President Congress. It's been a great honour, but after more than 30 years as a representative in the TUC, though just 1 year on the General Council, but I was first from the TNG and then Unite, I know the time does come for all of us to pass on the baton. So 3 very short messages from me. 1, thank you. To my union, my family, to the TUC, and to all trade union members and reps. 2, never forget to celebrate our achievements. However hard it gets, trade unions transform people's lives every day. And finally, and you'd expect this, keep equality for all, including statutory rights for union equality reps, right at the forefront of our agenda. And please don't forget justice for migrant domestic workers. Unity is strength. Let's stick together, stay strong, safe, and all of us, we can win. Thank you.
Also leaving the General Council is Gail Cartmel from Unite. Gail, please come up and address Congress.
I'll keep this brief. Thank you, President. I was the first woman 40 years ago to be elected by my union, the National Graphical Association, now a part of Unite. That was 1983. I said the other day 1883, but anyway. So that was 40 years ago, and so what's changed? Well, the General Council top table no longer looks like a replica of the casting couch for Reservoir Dogs. No longer do we work in smoke-filled rooms, and no longer are there packed bars adjacent to the hall. They can be found elsewhere. It's been a privilege to serve on the General Council and the Executive Committee. Who would have thought this kid would have ever made it, leaving school at 15? So I want to thank my union, a terrific union, Unite. I want to thank all of the lay members I've worked alongside during this period, and I really want to thank our brilliant General Secretary, Sharon Graham, one of the foremost leaders, if not the foremost leader, showing that women can really shake things up. Thank you, Sharon. And as has been said by other speakers, we stand in solidarity with all workers in struggle. I'm going to close by saying this. In 1983, I was a real anorak. I pored over every word of the agenda. And I had a great mentor, a man called Solly Kay, a communist East End councillor that stood against the fascists in the East End of London and to his dying breath. And he said to me, I tell you what, sister and comrade, there's a motion on that 1983 agenda, and it's seeking to undo the support that the 1982 Congress gave to the Palestinian people following the massacre of Sabra and Shatila. And he said, convince your delegation to come in on that debate, defend the rights of Palestinian people, their inalienable right to freedom and to live within secure borders. And I had the privilege of really speaking for Solly at that conference. We defended the 1982 policy. We've defended it every year since. And as a last-time speaker to this Congress, free Palestine.
Thank you, Gail. Also leaving the General Council are Andrea Egan, Emmerich Rape from Unison, Jane Stewart and Dave Allen from Unite, Heather Mackenzie from NEU, and Janet Farrar from UCU. Thank you for what you've done in your time on the General Council. You will all be missed. I'm sure... And finally, I can announce the next president of the TUC, who takes office from the close of Congress, is Matt Rack from the FBU. I wish him well and know that he is more than up to the challenges of the year ahead. Good luck to you, Matt.
I now call on Barbara Plant to move the vote of thanks to the President. Barbara.
President Maria, I am hugely honoured to be asked to give this final vote of thanks at the end of what has been a really successful Congress. You have been so supportive of me since I joined the General Council 2 years ago, and Maria, I have come to regard you as a dear friend. As someone who chairs GMB Congress, I know how nerve-wracking it can be and how tiring it is to chair for 4 days in a row, as well as attending all the fringe meetings and receptions. They are long days. I hope that my advice was useful, but you really didn't need it. You have been brilliant. Your values have shone through. You have been inclusive, patient, respectful, and fair. And we've seen those same values with the amazing TUC staff and volunteers who have worked so hard, many behind the scenes, to make everyone feel so welcome. And you've chaired with your lovely sense of humour, which I saw in that twinkle of your eye when you called the card vote. Things may not always have gone to time, but you have remained calm, steering our good ship with a trusty hand, and we got there in the end. I know, though, that you would have been disappointed not to take more delegates in some debates, and that will have disappointed you. But on behalf of all delegates, thank you for how you have chaired our Congress. And for your leadership throughout your whole presidency during a hugely turbulent time for our trade union movement. Maria, put your feet up tonight, relax, and be as proud of yourself as we are of you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you. Congress, we're nearly there, nearly there. Thank you to you, delegates, for all your contributions this week. And also, thank you for all that you do for our movement throughout the year and all you will do in the future. Nothing more to say, comrades? Then let's go forward in unity, in solidarity to victory. I now declare the 155th Congress closed.